Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Philip Kinsella, Philip Kinsella is my very special guest today, and he is here to explain who and what we are beyond our biological construct and what is the bigger picture beyond this universe. Philip Kinsella is the author of numerous books and articles on UFOs and consciousness, and his co-author, Chris John Mays, offers us a vast knowledge of UFOs and psychic conscious exploration. Together, they have co-authored The Eternal Avatar, which takes a deeper look into the amazing individual that you represent and the inherent powers you harbor, as it explores areas of paranormal and other varied research of reality to help understand our true self as the evolving avatar. Unfortunately, Chris could not join us today, but it will be a fascinating show, I am sure. All of the links are featured below in the description. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, and please do share my content with your friends. And I'm very happy to announce that YouTube channel memberships are now available so you can receive my perks and help to support my channel. Without further ado, bring on my honored guest, Philip Kinsella. Philip, welcome to the Quantum
Well,
Guide Show.
thank you very much, Karen, for having me on again. And it's wonderful to be in your wonderful presence. And Chris can't make tonight, but of course, he sends his best to all of you. And I'm sure he'll be on in the future. But thank you. It's wonderful.
Yes, he wasn't able to come last minute, but he's such an important part of the book that
Oh,
I thought
yes.
he was definitely worthy of mention. Last time you were on with Chris, we sort of covered about the first half of the book. Not that you could really cover half of a book in a 1 hour show, but we got started. I'm wondering, though, before we get started, Philip, is there anything that you would like to share with the audience, projects you're working on, upcoming things that you're doing, things that have your interest, or even things that have caught your eye on the world stage? Totally up to you. Anything you want to add before we really get into the book?
Yes, well, I'm very honored to be on the Quantum Guide show, Karen, and to tell your wonderful watchers that I'm working on a new project which deals with more UFOs, more to do with life after death, and also creation. And one of the things that's caught my eye, I think, with many of us that we won't go into detail about, is what's happening on the world stage, and seeing
Mhm.
this interconnection of negative and positive polarities taking effect. So yes, I've got some more filming to do this year for another company, and for next year I'm going to be focusing on my new book, and of course the book that I co-authored with my wonderful co-author Chris John Mays, The Eternal Avatar, is a deeper exploration into consciousness and also about what you are, what you represent. I think this is the penultimate question that must be asked, because when we come into this reality, we don't have a book to tell us how it is. We've got a system telling us what is and what isn't. And of course, as you go along this journey, you discover there are certain areas, certain subject matters which were once out of bounds and restricted within content. And you're thinking, well, either I must be mistaken or lying, or the system that we serve is mistaken or lying. So, so I believe that our projects, our work, all of us into the quantum, into the other side, into our alternative realities, our dimensions, is very, very important. So, yes.
Yes, absolutely wonderful. So the book, here's my copy, The Eternal Avatar. Um, Basically, let's just do a little recap, maybe of about the first half of the book. Of course, there's no way we could get into all the details in a 1 hour show, but basically, what I'm understanding is that we are so much more than what we think we are, and certainly so much more than what we're told we are. And with this heightened awareness of our true essence, that makes so much of life possible. Things that we never dreamed we could do, we end up doing. And it's also validating many people's paranormal experiences because it explains how it's possible, why it happens, and that no matter how bad things get, number one, it can always be worse, but number two, things will get better. Anyway, Philip, do you want to talk a bit about sort of just whatever you want to say about
Yeah.
wonderful, amazing, and inspirational book?
Thank you very much. Yes, both Chris and I decided to write this book, to co-author this book, because he is a healer, clairvoyant, brilliant artist and photographer, you name it, and a lovely guy, a wonderful personality. He's just so great. And he gave me the idea when we were in a pub with another friend, another producer friend of ours, and about the Avatar. And it is an important book because even when I was a child, I wanted to question the validity of what we call reality. It didn't make sense to me that we live and when we die. And that question is penultimate when we lose someone that's very dear to us and they go through the process of what we call death. And I think the way I'm seeing it is that there is a lot about us that is not to be revealed. We live by a system that is all about control and condensed consciousness. And this is bizarre. If you go back into the heyday, way back, people who used their mind outside the box were considered witches or sorcerers and either burnt or drowned. And I think this was an example within the religious establishments, and especially the powers that be, to frighten people into not using their mind. Because the system that we serve programs us through centralized programming, as it were. So I think and feel that there's a lot about the human, the model of the human, that we're not informed about. One is our genesis. Take away the religious ideologies, although most of them are important constructs, but the reality of that, of how we came into being, which our book explores, as well as the question of soul survival. And we also look into life between life sessions. That means to say that someone that recalls their time in spirit and they make a decision to come back to the earth, or indeed their life on the other side. So I've had multiple experiences, numerous of them, which informs me that consciousness is not independent, dependent of this biological matter. It is free to explore other realities, but we are temporarily locked within this physical matrix, within this biological construct for a certain time period before death releases the essence of what we truly represent beyond this material realm. So the book does kind of like encapsulate quite a lot. Chris and I have tried to explore certain deities as well too, and of course, primarily the reality of why this information has been hidden from us. And I say that lightly because, you know, when you look into the past, we don't know how we really came into being. Only a Sunday school version that we evolved from, you know, the ape into man. That is proven to be not quite correct. And as well as life after death, why are we always left by this system? One minute it says, oh, yes, there is life after death, and the next minute it's saying there isn't. And also about, we will touch upon it here just briefly about UFOs, the UFO reality, and why the system, again, is at pains to keep that a secret. So this is why Chris and I, you know, I think we bit off more than we could chew, but I think we got through it okay, to explore your brilliance, your excellence, your psychic abilities, what this does, what this is, the brain. And as we explained, is merely a portal for consciousness, but somewhat contained and conditioned within this reality and by the system we serve. But we can break away from that by using our own thoughts and thinking good things and positive things and heightening our vibration frequencies to another level of reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. And I agree. I think it's about frequency.
Mm,
Um, you know, we hear a lot about transdimensional, interdimensional, but there's also transfrequential. And unless we can hold the frequency, we can't occupy those spaces, for lack of a better term. And what I love about it too is it certainly takes away fear of death. Anybody who has had a lot of suffering or illness or has a bad diagnosis and they don't expect to live long, or maybe just getting old like me, and you get to a certain age and it's kind of downhill from there on in. But to have the understanding of the nature of who and what we really are, that we have lived so many times. And what's really funny about this, Philip, is I can remember one day, and this is quite a while ago, about 20 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 30 years ago. I was complaining to my higher self, or my guides, or my invisible, wonderful support system. And I was saying, some once in a while, I still get afraid of dying. And my guides laughed. They just laughed. And they said, Karen, if you had any idea how many times you've been born, lived, and died, you would laugh too, because that's just such an outrageous thing to be afraid of. And so what happens is, I think we come here for soul evolution. I know I sure needed it. Although I have to be honest and say there are days where I go, yeah, well, when I'm done down here, I'm not coming back. Didn't sign up for all of this. But most days, though, I'm pretty good with it. So I think it's wonderful that we can be aware that there's so much more to us. So this flesh and body suit, I think it's important because we need to take care of it. And if
Mm,
we damage it, then our journey here on earth is not as much fun, you
mm.
know. But at the same time, I think that there is just so much more. I don't know, Philip, I'm babbling. Please take it
No, you
away.
know, I understand because the subject matter encapsulate many areas of inquiry. One of the things I will tell you is that there is another side. In fact, there are multiple sides, multiple realities, multiple dimensions of reality. And I think this is where a lot of those fields within what we call the paranormal may make more sense to us, because most researchers are out there chasing something that they're never going to be able to hold or physically hold, because such forces are operating on very dimensional and vibrational levels that are different from ours. If you think about your mobile phone, you've got the hardware, but that's not the phone. The phone is actually the signal that you can't see.
Yes.
And that information, we don't know what's in it until it hits the translator, and voila. So I think these forces operate on these levels rather like that. But there are other sides, and I have had profound experiences, and I'm not one to claim anything. Most people are aware that with myself, I'm very grounded with theoretical content. But let me tell you, there are alternative dimensions of reality, and there is another side, in fact, multiple sides. And when you experience that, it's rather profound. I think that when you actually are getting these experiences and they're coming through to you, it's hard for us to translate because there are no words that connect with it. So I believe that what happens is that we are connected to a larger uh, realm of reality that goes beyond our level of understanding, but we can
Mm-hmm.
translate that. I mean, I had an experience not long ago, literally, of being relaxed and then seeing myself in another life. And I don't know if this is a future life or a present life, but it was so shocking because when the memory came through, when the impact of that came through, I knew that side. I knew where I was. And let me tell you, I was happier. It was like, wow. It was almost as if me in this life is just like a going through this process of exploration that when completed, I'll then reconnect with my real self there. So this calls into
Mm-hmm.
question parallel lives. And if there's a real version of you that's on the other side. And Chris, my co-author, has always said that he believes that the real part of what our whole self is on the other side. But what's happening is that we have fragmented parts that are incarnated into certain lives, and we're going through these experiences. I always joke and say that when I get to the other side, I'm going to get a refund. And I'm going to say to them, first of all, if they're trying to get me back down here again, then they need to get themselves down here and then come back and tell me that was a wonderful journey. So I also believe, as Chris does, that it's possible that within our incarnation, within this life, that we come through with a blank memory. We don't have any real recall of where we're from, until, of course, you start to progress through a child and you are developing or perhaps wired slightly differently and start to get these paranormal experiences that come through what we call paranormal. I think they're quite normal experiences. So it's
Mhm.
possible that we're creating a canvas, almost like some people creating a film. They have the actors, they have the script, you have all sorts of problems when the film's being made. And then, of course, what happens is once the film is developed, there you have it. You can actually live within it. So I've always thought it's possible to assume that we are creating, each and every one of us is so important, that we are creating a canvas that has been, sent to the other side that other souls can experience. So basically, we're all creating these worlds, these experiences, and that on the other side, we can really live them. And that's only part of the theoretical idea with regards to our journey. There are also other elements that we address within the book, which are quite hard to deal with, and that is to deal with the negative aspects of what may still be here on this planet and running the show, really running the show behind the scenes. But as the human, we're quite extraordinary and endowed with what we call a spirit, what most people call a soul. And that spirit is connected to the ultimate source of all that is. But the other thing that we wanted to have a look at within our book was the reality of creation, and not the Sunday school version that most people believe, because it's really strange that we live in a world that accepts myth or a fairy tale as truth. But when you try to dig into the real truth, it's almost as if you're swayed away from that area. Like, no, we don't want you to go down that road because that might open up a can of worms. And as I said before, it's the same with life after death, which has been rigorously studied by notable researchers around the world, and also UFOs, and why there is a constant um, denial from those in power, or, well, those above those in power, so to speak, and why these truths aren't coming forward. And I'll give one example here that we're seeing at the moment. Call it conspiracy, but it's no conspiracy. Three-Eye Atlas, the extraordinary object that is at this moment around the sun. Have you heard of that, Karen, at all, about this comet
Oh,
or
yeah.
supposed comet? And of course, the controversy of the NASA and the Chinese Space Administration cutting the feeds as it came past Mars from the Mars rover. And then, of course, it's almost as if, because this object is defying a lot of our physics and is not kind of like being seen as a comet, but could possibly be some kind of intelligent device, the denial and the silence is incredible. And this is what we're seeing on this planet. So denial, constant denial, don't want to look at it. We want to look this way.
Mhm.
We want you to look this way. We don't want you to look that way. It's absolutely beggars belief. So obviously we're understanding that there is a force here that is holding the human here, maybe through our choice or not our choice, and that a lot of our existence is literally so condensed. This is why a lot of people are not able to attune themselves into those dimensions of reality that we can sometimes connect with.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, very good. I noticed in chapter 7 of your book, you talk about how we are evolving avatars ourselves. So that means that we're not all finished done work in spirit form and we come down here and have this rather shocking earthly experience and then go back. It seems to be part of the learning process, as you've mentioned, and as people in our live chat have mentioned. um, but I also really, what really stuck out to me, sorry, not struck out, stuck out to me, is you have said in here that you believe certain timelines of our past ancestry have deliberately been falsified to fit a famous preferred narrative. Now, that I can see the evidence of that in history, in religion, in politics, in absolutely everything. But what's really weird is especially the last 300 years, so fabricated. And yet, if you dare to speak out against it, that's heresy, and seriously
Yeah.
still. And so the thing is, it's a good thing that we're good company with each other in this genre. But can you speak a little bit more about that? Because they're not only has been our past and our history's been falsified, but the nature of reality and the idea that there might be more of us, different renditions of our reality. And also, sorry, I didn't tie in Three Eye Atlas, but I totally agree with you. There are
Mm.
so many things that make you go, when it comes to that too. So please, Philip, please carry on.
Yes, I think most people will be in denial of the truth. It's almost as if a lot of people are quite happy to go along with the official narrative of how it all was and is. And this is frustrating. Looking into the original codices, they are the manuscripts. Well, they're not quite paper, but they were the codices that describe what happened in the beginning of time. And
Mm-hmm.
the Gnostic texts, for instance, that were found in Egypt in 1945, are more explanations of how it was. We have the Christian uh, version, the Hebrew from the Hebrew text, and within Gnostic text, it tells us quite an incredible story. And if you start looking into the past, we all know that within the biblical text, that the Anunnaki were known, the archons, and that the formation of the Adama and Eve, perfect human beings that I'm sorry, most people believe were just baked in an oven and came out, and that's your lot and tricked by a serpent. But it goes deeper than that. And I think most people's jaws will be on the floor to know that is it possible that we have been created by an intelligent species known as the Anunnaki, that were not given the spirit that we have as humans. It goes so far back that the ultimate source of all that is, wanted to express itself beyond its known and only reality, and it created aeons, and these aeons are known as angels. And as it created these aeons, the one was glorified to give some kind of personality and individuality to these beings. And of course, as with all things, there was a positive side and there was a negative side. And the negative side, which was connected with Pistis Sophia, who was the goddess of matter, she fell from grace for a short period of time, and allegedly within the documents had given birth, immaculate birth, conception, to Yaldabaoth, which is known as Satan. And we're not talking about a man with in a red costume with horns and a pitchfork. So the beautiful, wonderful Yaldabaoth had then set about creating the archons. And it's interesting to see that the archons then set about creating the human, would you believe it, through genetic engineering. That could be that they found Earth. They wanted the minerals from Earth here, most notably the gold. Zetai Zitrin has also expressed this in his works, as most other authors have. And so the archons created a human through an infusion of themselves and the hominid, the ape. So I think, when we look at Charles Darwin, I don't agree with all of his work, but I think there's an infusion of mammal and extraterrestrial in the human. So the archons then set about this experimentation until they perfected the perfect human, the Adam and Eve, and they set about that these species, their new creation, could reproduce. But Sophia, realizing her mistake, redeemed herself by giving the human the spirit, and the archons were never afforded that. And if you look in the biblical text, which I'm not saying that all of it is, the versions that we have is wrong. I think it's been mixed up and altered. And so the archons, the fallen angels, they mated with the females, the beautiful human females, and tried, I believe, to corrupt the original DNA or get hold of the spirit that the human had. And of course, we then go into the Nephilim, and then of course the story evolves where there was a great flood because the gods wanted rid of the experiment, and some humans survived. That was Noah with his family. So, I'm not going to get into the religious ideologies of all of this, but I think the story's been mixed up and changed. And as we can see today as human beings, we are creating life now. So if we had created a new species of human, they would consider us as, vengeful, warring gods, not God. So it's interesting to see that it's all to do with the spirit and how through our evolution, a lot of history has been wiped or changed to divert the human as it goes through its progressive cycles. We'll never be able to determine how we came into being, what happened, and to understand our brilliance as eternal avatars. And this is something the system is constantly, even to in our present day, dumbing us down, making us feel as though we are dependent on a system and programmed in a very, very condensed version of how it all is. But the mind is literally all that is, and the brain is the portal. And if you're conditioning the brain, you're also conditioning the mind. But this book is trying to remind each and every one of us that you are incredible, that you are an evolving avatar, that the system that we serve, and I still believe that this dark force is still present behind the curtains, rather like the Wizard of Oz, operating from behind the scenes and electing these puppets in charge, giving them power, money, and, authority over us as the minions. But, I believe that we're going through another cycle, and if we're not careful, we will go through another process of devolution yet again.
Quite likely, quite likely. You've mentioned also on page 126 of your book, the brain is a conduit for consciousness and serves no less as a gateway to alternate dimensions of reality, allowing universal organization to be filtered down into our narrow band of awareness. What I love about this is I also agree. Like, I don't think memory is in our brain. I think that our brain has the technology housed in it to access memory, but not just that. All of the paranormal gifts, contact with UFOs and aliens, beings from the spiritual realms, and on it goes, how wonderfully made we are. And yet, if you are, at least I believe, in my opinion, that if we're just completely swallowing the mainstream narrative, we're never going to find out what we are and have these amazing experiences. Then we have people like you and I. We've both had ET experiences. We've both had paranormal experiences. I don't even bother telling most people because they're just going to automatically think I'm cuckoo. They just can't handle it for some reason. But it opens the door for all kinds of other ways of being. And I'm wondering if you'd like to get a little bit into that. In your book, you talk about how, well, first of all, I guess through meditating, you decided you really wanted to find out what was going on with your deceased loved ones. How could you contact them? And you started seriously meditating. And that opened the door for this amazing experience. Do you want to talk about the time you were working in retail and the man came in and he wanted to buy your shirt? It's such a lovely illustration of what we're talking about, Philip.
However can I forget that? That will never be forgotten. And especially when you're touched by this singularity, that they will always remain within your mind. First of all, memory is located, I believe, within the biosphere, the energetic cycle of the human body. People call it the astral body, the second body. And that is where memory is it's like a donut coming around your system. The brain is just a facilitation of the information as it's being recorded into the system of reality. But yes, when my maternal grandmother had passed over, and we'd seen her a week before, she was dying of cancer in a Somerset hospital, very close to her. She was like another mom. And I was home here in Kempston in Bedfordshire in bed. And I woke up in the very early hours of the morning crying. And then I heard my grandmother's voice in my head as clear as day. The first time I think ever I've heard someone's voice from what I call the other side saying, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" And then she showed me in my mind a photograph of me and my brother as identical to her brother as babies being held in her arms, which is a photograph we have. And then there was silence, and then the phone rang and she'd passed. Now, I'd then gone to go and see a medium for the first time in my life, and thank goodness she was a really good medium. She used to work for the FBI in America on cold soul cases. That means to say if the police or the FBI couldn't find a body, they'd bring a sensitive in, and she had quite a high success rate. So I went to go and see her, and she wiped the floor with me, and she said to me, "You've got a spirit guide." And I thought, oh, gosh, here we go, because I was very grounded. She said, "He's a North American Indian." And she said, "You'll be back in 2 years' time, and I'm going to train you." And I was like, okay. So I got into my car. I was so shocked by the 2 hours that I'd spent with her. She wiped the floor with me, basically, in a good way. And I cried in my car. I put my head down on the steering wheel and I cried. And so I thought a spirit guide, a North American Indian. So I was really wanting to reach out to the other side to find out, where are they? What's going on? And who and what is this spirit guide? So as I was going through my process of meditation, which is important because there's so much noise in our world that we're swamped. This is why we're not able to think or connect, because the world is continuously bombarding us with a lot of jargon, a lot of distraction, news, troubles, war, all this type of thing. So I was meditating and I'm like, okay, so I've got a spirit guide and you're there to help me. I guess you're a discarnate person who hangs around me. Can you please tell me your name? So on this particular night, I saw, when I closed my eyes in meditation, when I asked the question, the image of these wolves. And then on the ground, cross-legged, was a North American Indian playing a flute. And I was naive. I thought that, this spirit guide or those on the other side would verbally talk to me. And I thought, you're giving me symbology here. So wolf song, that's your name. If that's your name, prove it to me. Of course, I got nothing back. And the very next day, I worked in retail. I was at my station, and this guy came up. He was a Canadian guy, and he was wearing a leather jacket. And as he approached the till point, I could see that his jacket was open, and underneath the jacket, he was wearing a T-shirt. And on the T-shirt were these wolves and a cross-legged North American Indian playing a flute. And we had a short discussion, and I was shocked. When I'd finished speaking to the man, he said, "I got it from Canada, man. You got to go there, And so I, thank you. As soon as he went, I took myself to a stockroom and I put my back against the wall, and I was literally shocked because I thought, oh my goodness me, this discarded entity, North American Indian, was validating to me that this was his name. And I think because I'm such a hothead, it takes a lot to get through to my skull. I'm very grounded. So these signs kept coming and coming, and I kept thinking, wow, this is incredible. There was another time where I literally had been serving some people on the floor. There was another young lady with me, and she was talking about this book that I was working on that didn't get published, but there was another version of it which did later, many years later, by a publishing company. And I said to her, yes, my spirit guide is Wolf Song. He gave me the sign of wolves and a North American Indian playing a flute. And there were two customers in front of us, and the man turned around, and on the back of his jacket was the wolves and a North American Indian playing a flute. So I kept getting these signs, and it was incredible. And I thought, wow, so I am projecting to them and telling them that I'd like some information, and they're sending it back to me. So this is how the ball started rolling. And I thought, well, have I created Wolf Song? Is he a higher part of myself, or is he actually a separate entity from me? And it didn't matter either way, whichever argument that someone would tell you how it is and what it is, because we just don't know. But this wolf song was there to assist me. And the more I thought of him, the more I talked to him within my mind, the more I expressed my emotional self to him, the stronger he became. So it was quite remarkable. And I thought, well, how do I deal with this? So this was the very beginning of my journey. And I will tell you that 2 years later, I had been back to see the medium because there were 3 other deaths within the 2 years, and they were all in the space of 3 months of one another. And one of them was a friend of mine, a working colleague, who had died of cancer, age 20, and he had read my manuscript. And I asked him if he could appear to me before he passed. I know he was terminal, and I said, well, he said to me, how will I do that? And I said, well, I'm sure you'll find a way. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll beam down like doing Star Trek. He died on June the 25th, 1999. In the winter of 1999, after his funeral and some time had passed, I got into a bookstore, secondhand bookstore that I used to frequent, to the paranormal section, and this book fell on the floor, and it was called Reunions by Dr. Raymond Moody, and it was how to communicate with the dead using a mirror. I did the experiment, and in the winter of 1999, my friend appeared to me through the conservatory glass doors, and that was so shocking that I went back to the medium and said, "Okay, I'm yours." So, and that's how the journey started on the psychic department.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's such profound um validation,
Yes.
and often that's what it takes to crack open that nut that we have of disbelief and allow ourselves to become the amazing beings that we really are. And that's another reason why I think your book is very, very valuable to everybody. I also noticed that in your book you talk about spirit guides,
Mm.
and you're fairly convinced everyone has spirit guides,
Oh, yes.
but they won't interfere unless it's absolutely necessary. So I'm wondering if you could explain what that means, because I myself have had um, contact in very profound ways. Often it was a response to a life changing event, to trauma, to times when I really, really needed them. It's interesting when I get used to having them around and constantly, you kind of just get fed by them as you go through your day. It's not always a profound experience, at least not for me. But then I go through what I call dry periods where I don't hear from them. And I
Mm.
think it's because I don't hear from them because I'm not needing them. It's time for them to take off the training wheels and give me a little push and pedal, Karen, pedal. You can do this. What are your thoughts, Philip, about why some people hear from their guides and some don't? And I'm sorry, I'm being silly
No,
here, but I just
no,
wanted
you're
you to.
not at all. They're
That's
very
what it
valid.
feels like, and I used to go, why am I having these dry periods? No, you're not supposed to be
Yeah,
all a mesh 24/7.
yeah, it's very interesting because my understanding of it is that the communication is not, as most people think, on a verbal level where they're always talking to you in your head, which they do. The communication is done through very sensory connections of the body. We are an
Mhm.
antennae. We are, very sensitive to our environment, but the system has shut us down with our emotions because we're so crowded with a lot of noise and distractions and disruptions and mental disruptions as well too. We worry, we're concerned. So I remembered when I started doing readings for people, and I only ask for yes or no. I'm not one of these mediums that feeds. I'm very direct and evidence-based medium. And one of the questions I wanted to ask them on the other side was the future. How can we tell the future? People want to know about their love lives or what's going on. And I got frustrated because I'm like, well, how do I tell them that? Well, that very night, I had 3 blasts within my solar plexus. The solar plexus. This is another area where we have to get in touch with our sensory connections of how we're really feeling, because I think a lot of us are cut off from that because that's what society does. So I had these 3 blasts within the solar plexus before I went to bed, and it was the most awful feeling I've ever had in my life. There was a feeling that I kind of remembered what that feeling was or where it's from in the past, but couldn't quite connect with it. So these 3 blasts came, and it was like every atom in my body had spread from within and out. And of course, the very next day, I'm at work on the customer accounts department where I was changed my job in the same department store, and my boss came up to me and said, "Have you heard the news? Come and follow me." He took me through to the staff restaurant, and on the TV was a plane going into the 9/11 buildings. And of course, I realized at that point that it's possible that the impacts that I was feeling was of the future event of 3 buildings, the main buildings that were struck by certain events. And so that was my first experience of a premonition, as people call it. Um,
Mhm.
so I believe also that when we're wanting to connect our souls to the alternative dimensions of reality, we have to understand that we're all different. We communicate differently. But one of the ways that I found was worked wonderfully was meditation. And you've got to feel how you're, what are you feeling? What are you sensing? What are you seeing? You know, how do you feel? So it's like a completely different language when those on the other side are communicating with you, because you have to decipher what they're communicating, what they want for you to know for someone else or indeed for yourself. So I get it. Sometimes we have very strong connections with our spirit guides, but remember also they're not allowed to run our lives for us. We have to live our life, unless of course it's not our time to pass, or there is perhaps some event which, because with life we have an outline or a blueprint to a degree, but we also have free will. And they can't interfere with every aspect of your life. Oh, I want this to happen. I want that to happen. Well, they're not allowed to interfere with that. Now, what's interesting about the blueprint of our life, I always joke I must have been mad to write the one I've written. And if there's a way of rewriting it, I've tried to do it several times, but I think they're not really worried up the other side. But one of the things I will tell you, which is interesting, is about our future as well too, and how we, you know, how is that made? We have free will, and of course thoughts create action, action creates events. Within this life you can only have one way of doing something physically, although your mind is sending out all these other signals of what you want. So with the spirit guides, and even if people believe they have angels, that's fine, because thought manifests reality. It's the same with the other side. When we cross over, the experience is unique to you as the individual. Although there are certain patterns within so-called near-death experiences, which is important to validate the experience that there is another side, the experiences will be very different from you. So, you know, sure, I've had those moments where I've really been tested, and I will tell you something funny here to close here, Karen. There was one part of my life where I was very annoyed, and it was a period where I was getting very frustrated. I remembered I had a go at my spirit guide Wolf song, like I was, you know, had enough. And you know, I actually did see him turn his back to me, and there was almost like this feeling of detachment from him to me, and it
Mhm.
upset me. It really upset me. So I had to go
Mhm.
crawling back to him and saying, "I'm awfully sorry. You know, I'm out of line," and it was incredible with the feelings of that connection of a discarded entity that most people don't believe in, but they are real. And I
Mhm.
believe that you will see that reality, you bring it into how you view it, how you see it. So that is very interesting.
It certainly is. I had a very similar experience when I have one of my guides, I call him Bob the Gray. He looks like a gray, except he's got this zany sense of humor. He wears a fedora and a black turtleneck sweater. And I think he does it to try to get me to relax and not be too fixated on his facial features. But anyway, he first started reaching out to me, and I found him to be really annoying. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was imagining it. And one day I started making fun of him, and then he left me. And it wasn't until he left me and not physically, but spiritually disconnected from me until I was mature enough to
Mm,
handle his presence and what he was there to do. And it took about 5 years, Philip, to get him back. And because I was actually making fun of him, I was disrespectful, and because I honestly thought I was imagining it. And
mm.
so that's why I think it's so important for people to acknowledge when they're getting through the peripheral of their imagination or their thought process or language, because
Mm,
often it's subtle, it's that quiet little that is easy to ignore. But if we don't ignore it and allow room, and I think that's what you're getting at too with meditation,
mm.
then it becomes stronger and stronger. So I actually had that happen myself with one of my guides, and but I learned, and now I don't hear from him as much, but I don't need to. I'm sure if I called out, he would he would definitely be here. But for that time in my life, he was super instrumental. I never would have written my book if it wasn't for Bob the Gray. And so I gave him good mention in my book. Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on, and we're quickly running out of time. Let me just quickly go to the live chat. I didn't really say hi to everybody yet. We got Fearlessly Phoenixing, Denise, Helena. We've also got we had Rodney. Rodney's also here. Oh, Polly was here for a while. Okay, so Denise says, can we be living in the past, present, future all at once? Sometimes I feel I am, especially in my dreams. And I wonder if
Yes.
you could answer that for Denise.
Yes, there is no time on the other side. I have seen the other side on two major occasions, and then residue of that seeping through to the normal conscious processing of awareness that we have here that can be overridden sometimes when the memory filters through. It's profound. Yes, Denise, absolutely, because there is no time on the other side. And of course, when we pass over, it's possible, as I said before, I did speak to Karen about this, about me having these profound experiences of myself in another life, but I know it so well, or a future life, and it's like an awakening and a shock, but the memory comes in. So absolutely, I totally agree with you. This is new grounds that we are exploring on a conscious level. And it's interesting because taking into account what we're sending out, and we can only do one thing physically here, but a lot of the hopes, wishes, desires, thoughts perhaps slingshot round again and could connect with our past, present, or future selves. This is why perhaps we go through deja vu, because we feel like we've done it before, right? And it's like, is this a replay? No, it's possible that it is. It's possible that it isn't. But with another part of our infinite self, absolutely, totally agree.
Thank you. And also, Helena just says 2 weeks back, I was flying like Superman and I did high jumps. And at that moment, I was thinking, I've done this before. I became aware or awake in my dream, but not totally. When flying, you cannot hesitate. So, this is a very similar thing to do with, knowing we've done that before. I've had tons of dreams of flying when I was a child. That was a mainstay of my night. So I think that also Denise also says, I get a lot of deja vu. Thank you, Philip. Sorry. Try not to get overwhelmed between dealing with the chat and paying attention to you, Philip, but it's all really super important. Now, we're coming close to the end of the show, so I'm wondering, did you want a few minutes to talk about some past life experiences that
Yes.
you had? And there's a couple other things you wanted to mention. I want to leave room for you to do that, to also tell people what you're up to, and
Yeah,
all that
sure.
other good stuff.
Yeah, so I will say that yes, I mean, there was an account of an near-death experience where one young lad had crossed over, and that he saw on the other side Christopher Reeve, Superman, because he's deceased, he's passed over, teaching young souls out there how to fly. Incredible as it sounds, doesn't it? But that is the way it is. The other side is quite normal, quite natural. With regards to the psychic part, we've got to remember that we are incredible beings. We live by a system that is continuously trying to douse what we truly represent. We're not just manufactured and then come to this world with the condensed programming to pay your taxes and do a job you don't really like doing. There's no opportunity. I mean, this is complete and total madness to my whole ideology. And also this concept of, oh, just earth and heaven, heaven and earth. There are multiple dimensions of reality, multiple worlds. And we only think of the human as the only one reality, when in actual fact, there are ETs, there are other beings that exist beyond this level of what we call reality. And yes, we are slowly going through an awakening because we're waking up from the con that we've had. But the system, those in power, are trying to really push down now to subjugate us. And we've got to understand that love and empathy is what will end up wiping all this away. They call it the ascension. And I really believe that, because if every single person on this planet was to raise their frequencies of vibrations of energy, then this reality would dissipate. And it's possible that we are perhaps living in some kind of holographic reality, and within quantum, that is not ridiculous as it sounds, and that we are basically switched off to a degree, but many people are switching on. And that's wonderful to see, I believe, within our reality, that a lot of people are trying to find these answers, and the system won't give you any answers. They're just going to tell you how they're seeing it and how they want you to see it, that you are just, you live and you die, there is no life after death, that everything is explainable. No, no, no. And I can attest to the fact that everyone's experiences is unique to themselves. This is the problem we have within the field of ufology, within the field of cryptozoology, with paranormal research, with near-death experience. Everyone's trying to fit it into the same box, and it will not fit. It is a unique experience to you. I mean, if you go back into the past, the Egyptians, incredible engineers, had come from a past which was technologically superior to ours. And of course, the pyramids of Egypt, the pyramids of Cheops were gateways to the Orion star system. They wanted to get off the planet. I've just got a joke here. They were desperate to get their spirit off of it. So, I always say to anyone, believe in your excellence and your brilliance. Don't let anyone sway your opinion, and go look and find those things if you're really wanting to find the truth of what you are, where you come from, and why you are here, which the system refuses to acknowledge. So we're coming through an extraordinary time of revelation. It is a painful process that the human is going through at the moment, and one I believe has been repeated in the past. And of course, well, that ended quite badly. But there is another side. There are multiple sides, multiple realities.
I would totally agree with you. And what an exciting ride it can be. But I know for me, if I start watching too much alt news and paying too much time to my phone, I forget all about the wonderful, miraculous aspects of being here. And I start to get dragged down into the politics
Mm,
and,
mm.
oh, the drama and the soup. And I've come to the conclusion, Philip, that it's all theater. It's all theater. And I treat it as theater, and I'm much happier. But I really want to encourage everybody. Oh, hi, Leah. Leah just popped in for a minute here. She's
Hello.
another wonderful viewer of the show. But I really want to recommend to everyone The Eternal Avatar by Philip Kinsella and Chris John Mays. You can see I got all my markings in here. I got all my highlighting in here because it's just such a wonderful book. And I think, Philip, you said you're working on a new book, or is it next year, which is actually only, what, 6 weeks away? Uh, can you tell us, give us a little hint, or tell us what you're up to?
Yeah, well, your books are just as amazing, and I have them too, Karen. So that's a very nice compliment that you stated about our book. We're all important. We're all part of this thing called creation. I am working on a new project, which will take perhaps a couple of years, and that's going to go to another publisher. And this will deal with a much deeper exploration of the lies, deception, and the intent from the system to really subjugate the human, the avatar. But we are strong, and we will win this fight because we are eternal beings. This is just a walkthrough. This is an experience. It is not the real life. Trust me on that one. When you are crossed over, when you have that experience, that is the ultimate reality that goes on. It is hard to explain in words because the emotional exchange is profound. Everything is within the void, every single thing that could be created. And the mind, imagination is not a little box in the brain that opens and closes. Imagination is mind. Mind is creation. Oh, people imagine that. Well, what do you think's been created around us? It's all come from the mind, and someone imagined that. So our whole basis and structural understanding of consciousness and the way the human brain works has to be rewritten, and it is. Thank God for that.
Thank God for that is true. Philip, tell people where they can find you. I will have the links in the description below. But for those that are listening on audio, maybe you could just tell them where they can reach you.
Yes, well, I have two websites. One is www.thekinsellatwins.com, and that's mine and my twin brother's work in the paranormal, my brother's art, and the books, and all of that jazz. And the other one is www.philipkinsella.com, which is my psychic site, and that's to do with my bookings and readings and stuff like that. And of course, you can just find me online. But I have to just point out, and I want your viewers to know that we are everyone important. It doesn't matter if you're the man with a can, or as we say here in England, the king with a crown. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Let me tell you, if you have a dream and you believe in yourself, you've got nothing to lose, nothing. And I know that there's a lot of people that try and sway you off that path. Don't let them. Just believe shapes reality. Believe in yourself. That is what you're about, your sovereignty, your spiritual sovereignty, your connection to the source of all that is. You are truly superb and incredible. Let me remind you of that fact.
Oh, that was so beautiful. Denise agrees. Oops, that's Leah. Sorry. Denise also agrees. She says that's beautiful. And Leah says we are source.
We are.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is I find for myself when I pull my head out of all the social media and everything and only pay attention to a smaller realm of my life, I'm so much happier. I know what I want to do. I can plan, I can do things, I can achieve goals I never thought I could. There's a real magic to this life if we just let it happen. I know you already just said all
Yeah,
of that, Philip, and
because the system will they know how to douse you. They know how to bring that negativity in and bring your energy levels down. You must not allow it. Remove yourself from negativity. Don't let it affect you. You are the instrument of the divine, and you don't need them to bring you down. Just remain positive and be with nature. It's true. Or meditate, be by water, and let all that rubbish out of your mind. That you don't need that. You need to focus on
no.
yourself and what you're doing.
Yep. And just think of all the amazing things we can do in this world. And we don't have to wait for permission and we don't have to expect the higher ups to do it. We can do it ourselves, grassroots movement. We can change this reality. Thank you, Philip, so much for being on the show today. Please pass on our love to your brother Ronnie, but also to Chris.
I will
And
indeed.
I just appreciate you so very much. Thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for all of those that came to the live chat. You really add an amazing new dimension to our reality. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. And we'll see you hopefully Sunday for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Okay, Philip, take care.
God bless.
Much
Take
love to
care.
everybody. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye now.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional: Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available in Amazon bookstores worldwide. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.